Chaudhuri. Sumit Chaudhuri is an international consultant trainer in the HRD space and is a chairperson and managing director of Third Millennium Business Resource Associates Private Limited. He has 4 decades of rich corporate management experience, having held senior management positions in DCM Limited and Escorts Limited earlier. An alumnus of Came College, Department of Social Work, FMS Delhi, and Faculty of Law, all four being prestigious institutes of University of Delhi. He also holds diplomas in labor law, Indian Law Institute, Delhi, and training and development. He has conducted many open in-house L&D programs for senior management professionals from major private sector. That includes ITC, Times Group, Birlas, Modi's, Escorts, JK Group, Dabur, etc. Many Maharatna PSUs like NTPC, SAIL, BHEL, IOCL, Coal India, etc. He has also helped many IAS and other senior government officers, IIPA, Indian Institute of Public Administration, IMA, DMA, and ISTD. He is a visiting faculty in many premier B schools as well. He has helped large corporates within and outside India through his management consulting interventions, published interviews and articles, papers presented in international conferences, and his professional work that has been covered by prominent national and international dailies. With this, I would like to welcome Mr. Sumit Chaudhuri on JMA platform. Very warm welcome, sir. Now I hand over the session to you.
Thank you so very much, Asmita, and a very good evening to all of you. It's indeed a delight for me to be here. The only thing that worries me is, the last letter in the acronym B.A.K.E, because I am no expert. I am a student trying to, understand what is happening around me, and that is what I do. So basically, what I will try to share with you is some of my experiences. And lately, given the kind of circumstances that we are living in, I tried to create a process for handling the kind of hyper disruption that we are all going through all around us in society, in business, and therefore management is everywhere anyway. Whether you call it administration or management, the country has to be managed, corporates have to be managed, everything we need to work towards the betterment of society, the betterment of the organization, and the betterment of the person. You are all must be familiar with the triple bottom line concept, planet. We need to be concerned about the planet. We need to be concerned about the people. And we need to also be concerned about the profits, because unless you generate some surplus, not much can be done for society also. So, Asmita, could you confirm, is my voice loud and clear? Is the video all right? Camera fine? Is that all
yes,
okay?
Sir. Yes, sir, all good.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. So I have a small presentation. The idea is not to discuss in detail all the slides, but the whole idea is this is available to you for a later reference in case you need. So I will just touch upon some of the slides and try to understand from a holistic perspective. So next, please. I think we can skip this one. You have given me such a wonderful welcome and introduced me so beautifully. Yeah, so this is where I was saying the last word, expert, is, I don't consider myself an expert. I'm a student and I will remain a student all my life. Yeah. So let's go on. So these are the 6 broad headings that I would love to touch upon, starting with change, which is happening all the time. We don't even realize that. We'll look at 1 or 2 examples. Then comes disruption in general, which is disruption in society, the world, and the universe. And then, of course, being concerned with management. So managing the disruption will come in. So disruption in management, what's happening and what to do about it. And then the key topic comes in, which is hyper disruption. And therefore, how do we manage hyper disruption? And point number 6 on the agenda, as you can see, is the process model that I tried to develop for looking at things which are completely uncertain, etc., etc. Right. So next, please. So as I said, the first is change. And below this, you can clearly see that this is a change which we all agree has happened. That is what evolution is all about. But it has happened so slowly that we have not realized. It is not something which we realize on a day-on-day basis. Not only that, even on us, our hair grows, our nails grow. Do we ever realize that it is growing? But suddenly we find it has grown. So that kind of a change is what I wanted to start with. And so this is familiar to you all. And let's move to the next, please. So our ancestors were brilliant. They realized that what we talk prominently today, that the only thing permanent in this world is change and all that. Our brilliant ancestors came up with, this conceptual framework of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, which essentially means everything in this world is created one day, starting with Brahma. Everything in this world is maintained for a while, and that is Vishnu, and everything in this world has to be destroyed one day, only for new things to come up, new life to come up. Now, this has nothing to do with religion, please. In fact, I'm an atheist, if I may mention here. But the concept, we need to understand the learnings from here. So they realized it, that understanding change as an eternal truth. And that is why we don't need to now learn from others as to what change management is all about, right? So that was the reason I put it in here. Next, please. Now, this is a very famous experiment on change. So if you put a frog in the normal temperature of that they are comfortable with in water, and very slowly you increase the temperature, the frog doesn't come to know. See, change is happening, but the frog is not realizing, and it dies in that water. It keeps on getting used to a higher temperature, higher temperature, and then it dies. But put a frog from the outside onto that, it immediately jumps off because that is uncomfortable. That change is too much for the frog. So gradual changes we don't realize. And this is what is happening in the planet today. All this talk of global warming and, some of the countries, including Maldives, probably going underwater, and I know glaciers melting and all that is what we have not realized till now. And we have not even realized in spite of the threat staring directly in our face. The Rio summit, the famous, Earth summit of 1992 happened 30 years back. But have we really worked towards it? We do lip service, but we are not tackling this. So we might become dinosaurs one day. Sorry for the negative witty that it might sound as, but then we need to face it, catch the bull by the horns, and rectify the situation. That is the crux. Next, please. Thank you. So now we come to faster change, and that is what is called disruption. You start feeling that, okay, the change, simple, normal change, we don't even understand that it is happening or realize that it is happening. So this was my post-graduation days. I was still a student at FMS Delhi, and there's this elder cousin of mine, almost 10 years senior to me. He's also a product of FMS and engineer before that from Roorkee. So he knew that, I'm in the habit of reading. I was a voracious reader and there were no options. We were not in a era of, internet, and even televisions were rare. Telephones were rare. Forget about mobiles. Even landlines, probably there were in the whole colony, there would be one or two landline phones. That was the state of time I'm talking about in the early 80s. So that's when he gave me this book and says, you read this. This is a wonderful book. So I said, okay. And I started reading it. And this was the first book, mind you, where I read 50, 60 pages and realized that I don't understand anything of what this guy is saying. So that's when I really started, and I used to respect my cousin a lot. So I realized that, he must have given me some great content. So I started reading it like a textbook, sat down on the table, marking, on this thing with a pencil or something. And that's when it started making sense to me, because this was talking of the reality shock, which was written in 1970. The title is Future Shock by Alvin Toffler, one of my all-time favorite authors. And what he said in 1970 in this book, which I was reading in the early 80s, after 52 years of that book, today every word virtually has come to be true. He passed away in 2016 after writing 4 or 5 other books also. So that was my first shock that the reality is staring at us. Though it had not really happened, it was still the phase of change, not a phase of disruption. But I was rudely shocked out of my slumber. That was the beginning of my understanding that yes, there is something called change which is happening. So next, please. So this is Alvin Toffler. So the future shock, the concept of future shock, it was defined as too much change in too short a period of time. For those times, 50 years back, it was too much of a change. But when we compare it with today's changes, it was minuscule. But the feeling started coming in that yes, something is changing, something different is happening, etc. Right? So too much change in too short a period of time, and that can today be increased to what we understand as hyper disruption. This was disruption, changes which we started feeling. Yes, changes are happening. We need to wake up to the reality and smell the coffee. Right. Next, please. Sorry. So today, if you look at, I'm not talking of hyper disruption as yet. I would say these were, serious disruptions. When you started looking at, now coming to management, because the disruption in general is what we were talking about. Hospitality segment. Now this example you would have heard a million times, that somebody who doesn't even own one hotel property is the biggest businessman or business uh, setup in hospitality. I'm talking of the Airbnbs and the OYOs of this world, right? No physical assets. Now it was completely unthinkable maybe 30, 40 years back. So that is where we start understanding that, the old models will not work any longer. Similarly, transportation, you're all familiar with the Ubers of this world. Not a single car owned by them, but they are the biggest transporters in the world. That kind of a thing has happened. So this was disruption. Business models started getting, I would say, dated. They went out of sync with the current realities, and these newer setups based on technology started disrupting the businesses or the managements of businesses. So that was the next stage of disruption. Next, please. So now linking it up, the reality shock of those times of the 70s and 80s became faster and more severe in the 90s and the early 2000s. right? So when we were in college, we were taught this concept of critical thinking or thinking through process, which told us that you look at what is your objective. You know, all strategies were centered around what is your end objective and therefore what we need to do today operationally. So that thought process has given rise to this new definition or new concept, so called. I don't think it is a new concept. In my view, it is a transformation of the concept of critical thinking or thinking through process, which has become very popular as design thinking. So we are looking at, if we are wanting to serve a customer, what is the customer going to go through? What are his or her pleasure points and pain points? And how do we create our products, which means goods and services, to fulfill that need of the customer? There's no point in just creating something. Earlier, that was the model. You just create a car or you just, create something and the customer has no other option but to buy it. In fact, jokingly, we were told, customer कौन है जो कष्ट से मर रहा है वो customer है. Those were times when even for buying a 100 rupee worth watch, you have to wait for 2 months. For buying a scooter, this Bajaj scooter, there was a waiting period of say 5 years, 6 years. Crazy situation, right? So that those customer pain points have obviously now been addressed after this realization, and we are always putting the customer first, trying to understand what is required and then produce accordingly. Okay, next please. Thank you. Now we come to what the theme is, hyper disruption, because COVID has, I don't know, taught us a million lessons overnight. I mean, this kind of a calamity, which hits the entire population of the world in some way or the other, is absolutely unprecedented. But then, have we not found solutions? And that too pretty fast. Which vaccine do you remember came up within the space of a year or so? But it was done during the COVID time. So it hit us so badly that we had to respond also with all our might. And to a substantial degree, we have been able to manage it. If you look at the Indian scenario, go back to March 2020, just before the lockdown, I think it was 24th of March, if I recall correctly. Where were we in terms of, PPE kits and your masks and all these are completely unknown. Masks were completely unknown in India, and PPE kits, well, for medical professionals, yes, it was there, but we did not produce a single piece here. And today we are surplus and we are exporting to other countries. And mask, I don't even have to touch upon. So what do you find here? What is the difference that has happened? From change, which was not even felt by us, to disruption, where we started feeling, yes, something is happening and we need to do something new, right? To this state of hyper disruption. In between, of course, as you know, complete business model changes, the meltdown of 2008, which hit the world economy, the subprime crisis, and all of that has happened during this period. But nothing has disrupted as much as COVID has done. So COVID threw up certain pluses. The use of technology became massive. This work from home business was, I would say, an eye opener that, a lot of big businesses can also be managed, barring manufacturing, of course, where you need a factory setting. Lot of things can be done sitting at home. But Are all positives there? Because you see, some people may be having that extra edge in terms of a nice home, this, that, and the other, who can, operate from a part of the home and do the office work. But not everybody is so lucky. There are households where there is hardly any space. And if two or three people, if both the parents are working and the kids have to attend classes online, it becomes a huge problem. So on the one hand, it may have saved us some kind of, pollution. It may have saved us the traffic jams. It may have forced us to survive on just the basics, which meant, lowering of our expenses. But then nothing in this world ever happens, which is all positive. We have to take the balanced approach. And one of the negatives, apart from, what I just mentioned, is what you see in Wipro today, 300 people being shunted out for moonlighting, right? And there are all kinds of pluses and minuses given around. But I personally feel that when you have been employed full time by the company, it is not only the salary that is paid for 8 hours of work, your medical is taken care of, your family's medical is taken care of. Are you saying that if you get unfortunately sick outside of those 8 hours, that insurance scheme should not cover it? You have signed a contract to be a full timer with a company. Otherwise, be part of the gig economy. What is the problem? So we need to understand things from a balanced perspective. So it might sound emotionally very bad that, people are being shunted out, but then commitments are always two ways. The Indian Contract Act clearly says there has to be an offer, there has to be an acceptance, and there is a consideration, which all are there as part of the appointment letter, right? Plus, all said and done, if you do 8 hours here and you do some extra work somewhere, you are, you're mentally draining yourself, and therefore the 8 hours that you give to your full-time employment will not be as quality, as full of quality as it would otherwise be. You need relaxation to it. So there are a lot of pluses, and so hyper disruption, what I'm saying is, it gave us the power to fight, creation of vaccine, helping each other out, technology being learnt by even people like me who are poor in technology usage, frankly. And Asmita is helping me a lot. I probably would have been able to do it, but not as smoothly as she is doing it. So one needs to understand this aspect. There are positives and there are negatives. So what is hyper disruption? Towards the bottom of the slide, you can see disruption at a much higher speed than anybody in the world could or would have ever imagined. That is what is hyper disruption. So next, please. So one more click, please. Yeah, thank you. So this is just disruption. I wanted to add that hyper disruption here. You see, there are changes happening all the time, up, down, all kinds of arrows are going. But hyper disruption is absolutely steep. So that is what we have to realize, that it is something which hits us with a huge impact. And are we competent enough to face that situation and get over this hyper disruption business as and when it happens? It has already happened in a big way, and in future also it is going to happen. So are we preparing ourselves? That is what my model is all about. Next, please. So many paths, so many options, we are always confused. Hyper disruption also throws up too many options and it makes choice difficult. Next, please. These are just illustrative examples. I don't want to spend too much time on that. So this great guy is confused completely because of hyper disruption, doesn't know what to do. Next, please. So now the point is, coming to hyper disruption in management, how do we solve these problems? So we have to look at what new has to be brought into in our B school education, since we are talking of management or education in a broader sense, also the learning and development activities of organizations. So that is where we have to look at. Are we creating? In fact, I'm quite unhappy with the kind of uh, freshly baked management graduates that are being thrown up, barring a few top of the line B schools. So we are kind of throwing into the market Abhimanyus, who are half baked, who will enter the Chakravyuh but without a clue as to how to get out of it. So are we grooming them to become Abhimanyus and die in the process? Die meaning mentally. Or are we tuned in? Or are we making the effort to create Krishnas, Lord Krishnas, who can almost handle any kind of problem that is thrown at him? That versatility are we inculcating in our young grads, management grads, in our frontline employees, etc., etc. Because please remember, no child is born bad. And it was not Abhimanyu's fault that he did not come to know how to get out of it. So that's an example I'm quoting as uh, a lesson for us to which way should our learning and development, education should progress. So that is a key, I would say, constraint in our education system today, both at the B school level or engineering and other levels, as well as inside the corporates, barring, of course, some premier corporates who are trying to bridge the gap very well. Next, please. So this is the theme of my model, which I'm coming to. It's an 8-step model. So we must learn to convert every adversity into an opportunity. I have given you enough examples of looking at adversity and then creating an opportunity out of it. But lip service won't do. One more click, please. The last part on this slide. Yeah. So what do we find here? The hyper disruption is our chance. Either you perform or you perish. As simple as that. Right? So we need to gear up and, as I say, catch the bull by the horn, so to say. Next, please. Now I come to the model that I wanted to present to you. It's basically a process model. Let me tell you, things are so uncertain that you cannot have a fixed model. But if your processes are fine, I keep on giving this example that if you buy the right kind of paneer, let's say, or chicken, let's say, and then you do the processing properly as per the recipe, there is no reason why the end product should turn out to be bad. Every corporate today and many other organizations also are process driven, not the end product driven, because the rightly so, the if the processes are right, then the end product has to be right. Right? So next, please. So the what is the key? In my view, it is speedy or timely. You can use either way. I think speedy and timely mean the same thing. I put both the words there. Process reorientation with inbuilt operational as well as strategic flexibility. Today's world and the future world is not going to have, okay, now we have created something, next 10 years we will eat out of it. Every nanosecond probably changes are happening and will continue to happen at a more faster pace. And therefore, both at the operational level and at the strategic level, long-term level, we need to constantly be able to modify, you know, our way of doing things. That is my essence. That is the key for me. Flexibility is the key. Next, please. So first step in moving towards that is, when we were students, we were always talking about, what is the best practice in the industry? What is the best practice in the country? what is the best practice in the world, keep on copying or developing the best practices, that is fine. But now, by the time you copy the best practices, the next practices would be needed. You know, Einstein said in his time that if you keep on doing the same thing in the same way and expecting a different result, that's foolishness. So we have to constantly change. That is where again the concept of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh comes in. If this was a little longer session, I would have explained that part also. And I heard it directly from Dr. Deepak Chopra, who you may know is a spiritual guru in the US, but his MBBS MD were from All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi. So he was a brilliant doctor and then went into the spirituality and all. How beautifully he explained this, that everything is changing with our physical body also, all the time, with our breathing and exhaling. So next, please. So we have to think constantly about next practices. And it is going to be steep. This picture just wants to illustrate that it's not a gradual shift, it's a huge gradient, and our bulb has to be constantly on today and move towards tomorrow in a steep manner. Next, please. I'm sure all of you are such a distinguished audience that you would be aware of what is the VUCA world. And just in case, a quick summary. This is not a single word. This is a word which has been carved out of the first alphabets of 4 words. And that explains the kind of world we are living in. V stands for volatile. U stands for uncertain. C stands for complex. And A stands for ambiguous. And this is a term which came from the armed forces. I have huge respect for the armed forces anywhere, because they are always working in a situation which is unknown. The enemy is not going to tell you what they are going to do to you and your country. So therefore, are they going to just sit back and say, well, we don't know what they will do, so what can we do about it? When they attack, we will see. No. So the VUCA world concept tells us, as you will see step by step, as to how to handle things when nothing is clear. Everything is uncertain, everything is volatile, everything is complex, right? Okay, next, please. So we reach the third stage. This is just a little bit of explanation, just in case. I've already mentioned these 4 aspects. Yeah, good. So this is a general summary of what VUCA does. I don't think time will permit me to elaborate on it, but you can spend 30 seconds just going through. This is the benefit of VUCA, you can say. Sorry. Okay, let's move on. So why did I bring in VUCA? That is a precursor to the third step in my model. Kindly next, please. So as you can see, we have been taught extrapolations, which means this is the trend. This is what has happened in the last 10 years, and therefore we project into the future. This is what is likely to happen. But those models have got outdated. And because of the VUCA world, and if you go back to that example of enemy country attacking us, now it is obvious that the enemy is not going to tell you all the details, that what is the time they will attack, with what force, at which point of the border, etc. So how do we operate in this situation? And which is what the armed forces are doing repeatedly, which is why I respect them to the hilt. So we have to sit down and brainstorm. Okay. Brainstorm what? What are all the things that our enemy can do in the business context, our competitors can do, our customers can do, all the stakeholders. Think about all the stakeholders around you as a company and try to list out what all is imaginable, what all could be volatile, what all could be uncertain, what all could be complex, what all could be ambiguous. Put your brains together and create a long list of such things. That is, from those situations, now you have listed out that this is what they can do A, B, C, D, they can do A to Z. Now we have to picturize our mental models. By chance, if they do A, what should be our response? If they do B, are we ready with a response to B? If they do C, are we ready with a response to C? That means mentally, we are prepared for all the 26 because there are 26 alphabets. So I'm just using that. It could be 50 also. So what all can they do? What all our stakeholders might do? And therefore, how do we prepare ourselves? Now the benefit would be whatever happens, of course, there could still be a possibility that, none of us could have thought of, like COVID, but you will be much better prepared to face the situation that emerges, right? So we must do constantly scenario analysis and use all the possible permutations and combinations of the VUCA world. And that is where you will say, how can we do that? It is so complicated. Yes, it is. And that is where your technology will again come to your help. Once you can put in the parameters that you have been able to identify, the permutations and combinations and all that can come in with AI and ML, right? So that's where technology will help. And technology is also growing at a fantastic pace. Just to give you a simple example, within 14 years, 1983, I first time played chess with a computer. I won the first game. I played another one, won that also. And there was a pop-up on the computer screen. And I was a very, very ordinary player, let me tell you that. And it says, oh, this way I will lose my job. The programmer had tried to make it humorous. And come 1997, just 14 years, and Deep Blue comes in from IBM. All the grandmasters put together, what Vishwanathan Anand or Magnus Carlsen or Korchnoi or Karpov or you name any, it beats everybody. So that is where technology is, I have no hesitation in saying technology is a great servant, but please don't make it the master. You are the master. Who creates technology? People create technology. Who chooses which technology to use? People choose. Who uses that technology? People do. Whose benefit is it aimed at? People. So let's not undermine. Management is all about management tactfully. Of course, men includes women power too. It's just the word, right? T stands for tactfully. That is the way one has to look at it. So scenario analysis. Next, please. We have very little time left, so let me try and quickly summarize. So creating strategic mental models. That is what I was trying to explain of the responses to the evolved scenarios. Next, please. There's a diagram on scenario analysis that will make it clear. Yeah. So is it readable? So first is identify critical factors. That's what I said. Generate alternative futures. That is the second step. Develop scenarios, as I explained, and develop scenario strategies. For each scenario, you have to develop a strategy. Next, please. So redefine managing. What are you managing for? Only the current, or are you able to anticipate what is going to come in the new world? How are your customers' demands going to change? How all stakeholders, not only customers, What are the new ways of, people are adopting, and we need to service that part of it. Only then we can stay ahead in the competition. Next, please. Long back, Prahlad and Hamel wrote a book called Competing for the Future, right? And that's what has become very, very crucial. So step 6, obviously, none of these can be done without proper competency development. Now the question is, what competence? For me, competence is a combination of knowledge, the skill to use that knowledge at the appropriate time in the appropriate situation, and of course, a positive attitude, right? So, which is why I created what is called the competency triangle, derived out of the very old KSA principle. Knowledge, skills, and attitude was always known, KSA. So I just, next slide, you will see the diagram, which will make it clear. So what competency do we develop? You have to focus on these 3. Next, please. ASK, simple word. And why that is, I've reversed the order, because I believe that if your attitude is positive, you will go for the right skill and the right knowledge. Next, please. So this is a whole topic of training I do. So if you take the triangle as your current success, the 3 arms of the triangle are knowledge, skills, and attitude. And the essential message is, unless you increase all the 3 in a well-rounded manner, you will not remain competent. You need to focus on all 3 angles. Next, please. Next few depict that. I think it has gone back. Next, please. You see, this is what will happen if you keep positive attitude is always a plus. But if you keep on working only on positive attitude, but not on your knowledge and skills, then it will not work, because the area of the triangle is not increasing, and therefore the amount of success is not increasing. Ditto for the other 2 dimensions also. Let's quickly go through. In a minute or 2, we need to finish, right? So see, you keep on increasing your skill. Next one will show you keep on increasing your knowledge, but the amount of success will not increase. So we have to have a well-rounded development. Next, please. So this is same about knowledge. Keep on increasing knowledge, but you will. I know my cricketing knowledge would probably be as good as Kohli or Bumrah, but why can't I go and play? I don't have the skills. I have not developed that, or I was unable to develop that. Okay, next, please. Sorry for going a bit fast. These are just definitions. I don't have to explain. You are all familiar with these terms. Next, please. Now, this is a beautiful thing. Maybe 2 more clicks down below. There is a, yeah, thank you. So what does it say? Just see. It does not matter where you are the boss or the, first line. A gazelle has to run fast so that the tiger doesn't catch, or the lion doesn't catch it. And the lion also has to at least run faster than the slowest gazelle. Beautifully said. So if you read the last line, when the sun comes up, you'd better be running. So constantly increase your competence as an individual, as an organization, pooling in all the competencies of all the stakeholders. That's when an organization will grow. Next, please. Yeah. So we need to build blended models. You have all kinds of mix of people in organizations. Everybody's learning style is different. We cannot have the same learning style for a person like me with, at my age and stage, and a youngster. And we see that in our homes. You cannot deal with your kids the way our parents dealt with us. So within the house, there will be a slow learner, a fast learner, somebody addicted to learning on the mobile, somebody addicted to learning still on a sheet of paper or writing it out or whatever. So we have to develop blended managing models or management models, whichever way you put it, so that everybody increases his or her competence. That brings me to the last point. Next, please. The eighth step in the model, blended learning. Of course, these are diagrams just to give you a few examples so that I think time doesn't permit us. So let's move on and come to point number 8. Yeah, again, blended learning. There are lots of models that are evolving and we can use any of them or create our own. So finally, we are building readiness. Readiness for what? What I tried to explain through though I did it a bit fast, but I'm sure you are a brilliant audience, you would have got the crux of it. The attitude, knowledge, skill, so that our competencies increase. There will be learning. Sometimes we will go out of date, so there has to be unlearning, and we have to learn the new ways, that is relearning. And this is again a quote from my favorite author. Next, please. Alvin Toffler. He beautifully said, the illiterate of the 21st century. When I use quotes, I try to read it out so that I don't make a mistake. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. We have to be with the times. And these are the list of books that he wrote. So any of these you could possibly get. Okay, next, please. So this is just a summary of all the 8 points on one slide. So I don't think we need to go through this. Next, please. So the message is, let's be winners. It is not good enough to be number one, but please pick up the others around you also. That is what will make a great organization, right? Next, please. You must have heard of this saying, give the world the best you have and the best will come back to you, right? It's all here. Next, please. So I have formally ended, but I can't finish without, of course, then I'll take QA if possible. Uh, these are people who have helped me tremendously, mentored me in various ways, helped me in various ways to be what I am. So I must put on record their contribution. Next, please. She is an associate actually, and helps me out with the research and all on honorary basis. That's the greatness of her. She's a great learner, and she keeps helping me out with this. And in the process, she is developing herself too. So that is why my thanks to her. Next, please. Of course, the organizers, Jamshedpur Management Association, and of course the parent body, All India Management Association, right here in Delhi where I am, for introducing me to JMA. And I was really thrilled when I got this invite to express my views. Next, please. Yeah, this is the last slide. So at the end of the day, if the participants are not coming and joining in, what is the point? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So that is why my last thanks are always reserved for the participants. Thank you so very much. And I'm open depending on, thanks to you, Asmita, for all the help. And if you want to ask, if you think there are Q&A. I am happy to answer to the best of my ability.
Thank you, sir. The floor is now open for questions. You can interact with Mr. Sumit Chaudhuri by unmuting your mic. You can also post your questions.
Professor Chaudhuri, that's an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Only one word I would like to add, and that is empathy in design thinking, which I thought was missing in your presentation.
Perfect.
By the way, it's an excellent presentation.
Perfectly said.
Right.
That one word covers everything, you know.
Right.
Absolutely. Totally in agreement with you.
That is where it differentiates problem solving with design thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Entirely agree. I will put that in
Right.
next time. Thank you so much for that
Right. Thank you.
addition. Pleasure. Any other question, please?
Yeah, Mr. N.K. Singh is raising his hand. Yes, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I'm N.K. Singh, working in TCL, Tinplate Company of India Limited.
Right.
Just, I have one question. Just before this session, we were going through a risk management session. So, what I was finding is the risk management and the disruptive management, both are, I feel that both are the same thing. Or is there any difference between the risk management or disruptive management?
Great. First of all, I am plain Sumit. I am no sir. So that is a minor request I would make, or a major request from my side, and a minor correction from your side. So it is, you are right. See, basically, when we sit down to solve a problem, then we look at it, and we look at it from a holistic perspective. It would primarily feel like, you know, the steps for solving any problem would be more or less the same. And I quite agree with you that these two concepts may be very, very linked to each other. But what I have seen, I am not a finance person, but typically when people think in terms of a general person, a normal person thinks in terms of risk management, their focus typically lies on the financial aspects, financial risks, you know. So that is the only slight difference, that probably, as it is understood, but you are right in saying that they are similar, very closely intertwined, but most people have a perspective of risk management from the financial angle. Whereas when you talk of handling any kind of disruption, finance is one part of it. And we are looking at the broader scenario of trying to cover all kinds of issues that might be thrown up. That would be it is a little more holistic, I would say, than pure risk management, but they are linked.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions for sir?
So Asmita, no questions means either I have not explained anything or I have explained everything. I don't know which one is right.
I think, sir, the latter is true.
I would go by everything.
So nice of you to say that, but that is in a lighter vein. No, any questions? I am, to the best of my ability, of course, I'll try and answer.
Okay, I guess there are no more questions. If anybody wants to share any feedback or any questions, you can reach out to me after this session and we will convey the same to sir. Now, I would like to request my colleague, Ms. Sridhara Goswami, to please present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ashmita. So this pretty much brings us to the end of the BAKE talk today. First of all, kudos Ashmita for conducting the session so well today. Sir, on behalf of the entire Jamshedpur Management Association, I would like to express a heartfelt thanks to you, Mr. Sumit Chaudhuri, for conducting such an informative session on such a relevant topic that it is today. And I believe, sir, I speak for everyone present that it was really a very enjoyable session and there never was a dull moment. There might not have been questions, probably that was because of the session being so informative and enjoyable in itself. A special thanks to the entire JMA team, especially mentioning Ashmita and Vinay, if he is here, for all the hard work in making this session happen. And last, but definitely not the least, I, on behalf of the entire Jamshedpur Management Association team, would like to express my deep gratitude to our audience today. You see, the success of any program is in the hands of the audience, and we are tremendously grateful to you for having taken time out of your busy schedules, to make this program a success today. JMA keeps organizing many such wonderful events, and we would be coming with many more such wonderful programs in future. And we would love to have you all on board with us in future as well. For more information on any of the upcoming events, please follow us on any of the major social medias. You can also reach out to Ashmita or myself. And that's all. Thanking everyone for being present. A special thanks to Mr. Sumit Chaudhuri once again, sir, and wishing everyone a very happy Navratri.
It was an absolute delight for me, and those kind words from Asmita in the beginning and now from you really made my not only my day, but probably the week, the month, the year. Thank you so very much. It was indeed a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure was all ours. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sridhara. Thank you, sir. And thank you to the audience. We will be sharing a feedback form soon in your mail. Please make sure to share your valuable feedback. It helps us grow. And with this, I announce the session has ended. We will see you next time. Have a great evening. Bye.
I'm permitted to exit
Thank
now.
you for this session.
Definitely, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Okay,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot, everybody.